Imagine this. It's 1996. The internet is a chaotic tangle of pages, exciting but overwhelming. Search engines exist, sure, but they're clunky, easily manipulated, and not very helpful. You type in something, and what you get feels random, almost like tossing a question into a crowded room and hoping someone shouts back the right answer. Now, picture two Stanford PhD students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. They weren't trying to build a company, they were trying to solve a puzzle. How can we make sense of all this? Their idea was radical. What if a page's importance wasn't based on how many times it used a keyword, but on how many other important pages linked to it? Just like in academic research, where citations signal value, links could do the same on the web. So in a Stanford dorm room, a project named Backrub was born. It crawled the web, analyzed links, and ranked pages by relevance, not noise. The idea was elegant, simple, and it worked. It worked so well, in fact, that by the time they renamed it Google, it was already outgrowing the university's servers. What started as a research experiment became a revolution, and in just 25 years, that revolution has reshaped everything. How we learn from textbooks to Google search, how we communicate from emails to Google Meet, how we shop, navigate, even how we think, is filtered through a system that began with a single question. How do we organize the world's information and make it accessible to everyone? Not just for professors, not just for techies, for everyone. That bold vision to democratize access to knowledge didn't just create a tool, it created a foundation, one that every student, teacher, creator, and dreamer still stands on today. Let's rewind to the late 1990s, a time when the internet felt like a wild frontier. You could search for something and get hundreds of irrelevant results. Pages weren't ranked by usefulness. They were ranked by who shouted the loudest with keywords. Now enter Larry Page, a Stanford PhD student, not looking to start a business, but driven by curiosity. His fascination wasn't with websites, it was with links, specifically how one website referenced another. It reminded him of citations in academic papers. The more you're cited, the more important your work must be. So Larry imagined the web as a massive academic journal. If he could track these citations or links, maybe he could understand which pages mattered. He teamed up with Sergey Brin, another brilliant mind, and together they began building an algorithm called PageRank. Think of PageRank as a popularity contest, but not based on flashy looks or clever slogans. It asked who's being linked to the most and by whom. If a respected site linked to yours, that counted for more than just a random mention. This wasn't just another search engine idea. This was a mathematical model of relevance. It wasn't about keywords. It was about credibility. It was about trust. The system worked better than they expected. It didn't just return results. It returned the right results. But innovation alone doesn't change the world. Action does. So in 1998, Larry and Sergey did something bold. They set up their first official office, not in a tower, not in a fancy lab, but in a garage in Menlo Park, California, rented from a friend named Susan Wojcicki, who would later become CEO of YouTube. From that humble space, Google was born. Now about that name, Google. It wasn't just catchy, it was clever. It's a play on the word Google, a number that's 1 followed by 100 zeros. It symbolized their vision, to index the seemingly infinite knowledge of the web, to organize the world's information and make it useful, not just for scholars or techies, but for everyone. And here's the magic in that moment. They weren't chasing money. They were chasing meaning. They believed that the web, chaotic and disorganized, could become a map. And not just any map, but one that everyone could hold in their hands for free. And it all started with a question. What if the web could think like a researcher? What followed, as we now know, was not just a new way to search, it was a new way to see. As the 2000s began, something curious was happening online. You'd search for something on Yahoo or Alta Vista, and the results were good enough. But then came Google, clean, fast, and eerily accurate. It didn't just answer your question, it anticipated it. That difference, relevance, changed everything. Word spread. By the early 2000s, Google wasn't just another search engine, it was the search engine. But what really accelerated Google's rise? One word, AdWords. Launched in 2000, AdWords allowed businesses to pay to appear alongside relevant search results. But here's what made it different. It was targeted. Ads only showed up when they matched what someone was already looking for. It was efficient, scalable, and incredibly profitable. Suddenly, Google wasn't just a search tool, it was an advertising empire. Then, in 2004, Google took the next leap. It went public, but in typical Google fashion, it didn't follow the script. Instead of a traditional IPO, they used a Dutch auction, allowing everyday investors to compete alongside Wall Street. It was bold, it was unusual, and it was guided by a now famous motto, "Don't be evil." That phrase, simple, almost childlike, resonated. In a tech world driven by profit, here was a company saying, "We can do well by doing good." But the IPO was just the beginning of a bigger challenge: scale. How do you grow without losing your soul? How do you innovate without becoming too big to move? This next chapter, 2005 to 2010, is when Google stopped being just a destination. It became a platform. Let's start with Gmail. When it launched in 2004, the idea of having 1 gigabyte of free email storage sounded absurd. Most email providers offered 10 megabytes at best. Gmail wasn't just generous, it was blazing fast with revolutionary search built right in. It changed how we handled communication. Then came Google Maps in 2005. At first, it felt like a novelty: drag and drop maps, satellite views, step-by-step directions. But fast forward a few years, and Google Maps wasn't just handy. It became essential for commuters, for businesses, for travelers across the world. Today, it guides our lives, literally. And just 1 year later, in 2006, Google made a move that would define the future of content. It acquired YouTube. At the time, YouTube was a scrappy video sharing startup, but Google saw something bigger, not just cat videos, but the potential for global storytelling. Today, YouTube isn't just a website, it's the second largest search engine in the world, behind only Google itself. And here's one of the big ones: Android. In 2005, Google quietly acquired a little company building an open-source mobile operating system. That system? Android. What followed was nothing short of a mobile revolution. Android became the backbone of billions of smartphones, powering a device in your pocket that's more powerful than the computers that sent astronauts to the moon. With Android, Google didn't just build a mobile OS, it built a mobile ecosystem, one that would dominate the next decade. By 2010, Google wasn't just helping you find the world's information, it was giving you the tools to live in that world, to communicate with Gmail, to navigate with Maps, to create and consume with YouTube, to connect with Android, and in the business world with cloud, analytics, AI, and the list goes on and on. So Google has grown tremendously from organizing the web to organizing our lives. And that shift, subtle at first, would define the company's next era. Because when you control the tools, you don't just serve the user. You shape the experience and you develop the future.
I've got more magic than just presents. The next video will slay you. Click it, or it's an empty box for Christmas, labeled Imagination.